Hello, children. The topic for today's discussion is a short story, The Little Girl. The story is written by Katherine Mansfield. Katherine Mansfield was an English author. Actually, she was born in New Zealand of an English family, and at the age of 19, she went to England and she lived in England thereafter up to the age of 35 when she died. In the year 1923, she died. She has written beautiful children's fiction, particularly the short stories, and this is a very good short story by Katherine Mansfield. The title, as you can see here, The Little Girl. This story has psychological implications, child psychology, particularly how a little girl feels when she is behaved in a particular manner, and how she misunderstands her father, who is very strict to her, and at that little age, at that growing age, she is unable to realize it. But in the end of the story, you find that how she realizes it. But when the story starts, you'll find that the girl is very much scared. She thinks that her father is just like a giant, and the behavior is not at all friendly, and he's an uncaring and rude father. As I told you, the theme is uh, that of a girl, how a girl feels when she has behaved rudely, or at least she thinks that she is behaved rudely in the family. So, parental behavior. I'll just show you, and you'll understand it. This is the theme of the story. You can see here theme. I have explained it here. How the behavior of the parents or the parental behavior impacts a small child, and how she starts thinking in negative terms about her father. Here, uh, I have written, and you can just understand when we discuss this story, that in the beginning of the story, her opinion about her father is different, and in the end of the story, her opinion altogether changes. How it changes, that we'll see. Okay, and she realizes for the first time when her father behaves in a very sympathetic and compassionate manner. In the end of the story, that he also has a human heart, that you can just see the whole thing here. And the message of the story is that one must be very much careful and cautious while dealing with the small children, because they are tender and they are growing, and whatever treatment is meted out to them, it leaves a indelible imprint on their mind, and it lasts throughout the life. So this is about the theme and the message of this story. You'll just read it and you'll understand it whole. Let us resume. It is here, you see in the introduction. Do you feel you know your parents better now than when you were much younger? Perhaps you now understand the reasons for some of their actions that used to upset you earlier. So this realization in your life comes in the later part. Initially, you feel that they are your enemies because they are always scolding you or nagging you. The same thing happens with this little girl in this story. This story about a little girl whose this story is the story about a little girl whose feelings for her father change from fear to understanding. She was very much fearful and scared in the beginning, and she develops an understanding with with her father in the end of the story. We'll probably find an echo in every home. That means this is the story of not only this girl, but this is the story of every home. Let us begin this story. As you can see, this is the first paragraph. To the little girl, he was a figure to be feared and avoided. The author begins this story telling about the little girl and her relation with her father, how she feared, how she was scared of her father. Every morning before going to work, he came into her room and gave her a casual kiss, casual, not from the core of his heart. She thinks at least, casual kiss, to which she responded with "Goodbye, father." And oh, there was a great sense of relief when she heard the noise of the carriage growing fainter and fainter down the long road. So when her father went to his office in the morning by a carriage, and when she was left alone in her family, and she was left with her mother and grandmother, of course, she felt relieved as long as her father was away. But he returns in the evening, you see. In the evening, when he came home, she stood near the staircase and heard his loud voice in the hall: "Bring my tea into the drawing room. Hasn't the paper come yet? Mother, go and see if my paper's out there, and bring me my slippers." So as soon as he comes, you see the behavior of the girl's father. The girl's name is Kezia in the story, Kezia. So as soon as he comes, he goes on firing the orders one after the other. Asks about the paper, and he asks for the tea. Okay, one after the other orders he gives to his mother and to his wife, and of course to Kezia. And you see here, Kezia's, in this second paragraph, Kezia's mother would call to her, "If you are a good girl, you can come down and take off father's boots." That means the little girl is engaged in removing her father's shoes. A little tender girl. This the treatment in itself seems to be a little bit inhuman. A growing child, what impact she will have on her mind. Anyway, slowly the girl would slip down the stairs. She was upstairs, her room is upstairs. So she comes down more slowly, still across the hall, and push open the drawing room door. By the time he had his spectacles on and looked at her over them in a way that was terrifying to the little girl. This kind of treatment, it leaves some adverse impact on the child's mind, particularly a tender child who is growing and who is understanding the environment and the treatment meted out to her. By that, she is learning. For her, such terrifying looks and this rude behavior, she feels too much. This paragraph you can see here. "Well, Kezia, hurry up and pull off these boots and take them outside. Have you been a good girl today?" She was so scared. She said, I don't know, father." She stammers. She's so scared that she stammers. So her father says, You, you don't know. If you stutter like that, mother will have to take you to the doctor. If you stammer like that, mother will have to take you to the doctor. Okay? She never stuttered with other people, had quite given it up, but only with father, because then she was trying so hard to say the words properly. Okay? And then the father asks what the matter was with the girl, and 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 he asks his mother to teach his child how to behave properly and how to live properly. Otherwise, he thinks that it will be suicidal if the child doesn't learn these things. Okay? And then he Here, Kezia, carry my teacup back to the table carefully. And he was so big, his hands and his neck, especially his mouth, when he yawned. Thinking about him alone was like thinking about a giant. The girl thought that he's a giant. Okay. Such a huge his mouth was and huge personality and all. It looked like a giant. So she was again scared because she might have heard the stories of the giants and how harmful they were. So on Sunday afternoons, the grandmother sent Kezia to the drawing room to have a talk with them and to develop an understanding between herself and her parents. But when she goes to the drawing room, what she finds, you see, that they are busy. I'll just show you. You can just see how it all happens here.
On Sunday afternoons, Kezia's grandmother sends her into the drawing room to spend time with her parents. When Kezia enters the drawing room, she finds her mother busy in reading and her father sleeping. Kezia feels a bit neglected. One day,
So, so now here you have seen how Kezia feels neglected when she goes to the drawing room and she finds her parents are busy and she thinks that they have no time to spare for her. And you see, this is the scene of the drawing room, okay? And you have seen just now the clip. So this all leaves the child alone and she feels lonely. Only the grandmother is her friend. Okay. So next important thing is one day when she was kept indoors with a cold, her grandmother told her that father's birthday was next week and suggested she should make him a pin cushion for a gift out of a beautiful piece of yellow silk. So she says, you make a pin cushion and give it as a gift, as a present on the coming birthday of your father. Okay, and the girl tries one. She stitches one pin cushion and for stuffing in the pin cushion, you can see here, she needs some stuff, and she goes to her parents' bedroom, and there she finds some papers were lying. On a small table beside their bed, and she picks up those papers and tears them into small pieces and stuffs the pin cushion. Pin cushion is a small pin holder which they use in the offices for I mean uh, holding the pins. It's a pin holder, and when she does it, she didn't know what that paper was about. So it is done. She has torn the papers. Okay. Then that night there was a hue and cry in the house. Father's great speech for the Port Authority had been lost. So there in the paper was this great speech for the Port Authority. Father had written the speech and he had to deliver that speech. It was torn in that paper. In that paper, the speech was written, and the girl didn't know. So the rooms were searched and the servants were questioned. Okay. Finally, mother goes to Kezia's room and she asks Kezia. There is a conversation about the papers, and she says, "Yes, I tore them up. I tore them up for my surprise." "What?" screamed mother. "Come straight down to the dining room this instant." And she takes her to her father, and her father is questioning, and she's so scared that did you do that, the father asks. No, no, she whispers. Okay, she's terribly scared. Okay, and then father says, he asks his mother to bring that speech, that those torn papers to him, and says that put the child to bed instantly. And the child's grandmother, that means father's mother, does it. And father was so upset that you can see here the father came into the room with a ruler in his hands. Okay, and he is now bent to punish her. I am going to beat you for this, he said. Oh, no, no, she screamed, hiding under the bedclothes. He pulled them aside. Sit up, he ordered, and hold your hands. You must be taught once and for all not to touch what does not belong to you. Look here. Not to touch what does not belong to you. That means in the family there is a difference. Certain things are hers, the other things are of her fathers, and are either of her fathers or of her mothers. Not everything is not everything is his, or sorry, not everything is hers. So now that difference in the family, all things you can't say that they are yours. This also somewhat, I mean, odd and disturbing, the girl might have found, but it was for you, for your birthday, the girl says. It was for your birthday, the girl says. But the father is so upset, he is not going to listen at all. And down came the ruler on her little pink palms. The child is punished. And the child is punished. And in the following paragraph, the mother is trying to comfort the child, and she wraps her in a shawl and rocks her in a rocking chair. The girl is so sad that she says, what did God make fathers for? She sobbed. She's sobbing and asks her grandmother. Grandmother actually had tried to convince her father, but he was so upset he didn't listen even to the grandmother. Okay, and then the grandmother says, okay, you just blow your nose, clean your nosy, and go to sleep. And she says that and forget about all, the next morning it will be all right. Look here, this is important, this paragraph. But this paragraph, how such behavior influences a little child. But the child never forgot. Next time she saw him, she quickly put both hands behind her back, and a red color flew into her cheeks. She blushes and she hides both of her hands behind her back. This is the impact of that rude behavior. Now, in the following paragraph, the author has talked about a family. They were the next door neighbors of Kezia, and that family is of the McDonald's. Mr. McDonald's had 5 children, and he was very friendly and very kind to his children. He used to play with them, and this is what Kezia is seeing. She's seeing through a gap in the fence that how McDonald is behaving in a very, very kind, sympathetic, and in a very cheerful and joyful manner with his children. and how my father is behaving with me, she can easily draw a difference. She can easily draw a difference between MacDonald and his children, and herself and her father. And then here in this line you can see she decided there were different sorts of father. Her father is different, and MacDonald is different. He's a very gregarious man, a very cheerful man, a man with a very cheerful and pleasant temperament, where her father was a man with a silent temperament and with a very rude kind of mind. This is what she thinks about her father. And then there is a turning point. One day, uh, Kazia's mother becomes ill, and she and grandmother go to the hospital. The little girl was left alone in the house with Alice, the cook. That was all right in the daytime. Well, then further you see, this is a picture of MacDonald playing with the children, as you can see here. Okay, okay. Now she's alone. Mother and grandmother are not there. Alice is there. But while Alice was putting her to bed, she grew suddenly afraid because the influence of her father's behavior on that little child's mind was such that she starts seeing the nightmares. She starts seeing the nightmares. And as we have seen in the beginning of the story, that she uh, takes her father as a giant. Okay, then she asks, what will I do if I have a nightmare? She asked. I often have nightmares, she says. And then Granny takes me into her bed and I can't stay in the dark. It all gets whispery. Whispery means as if she's seeing the images of ghosts or some supernatural beings. Okay, all that very, very suspicious and all very, very unusual, uncommon. Okay, the world, some other world she sees in her dreams, in her nightmares, very bad dreams. She says she sees. Okay, and what shall I do? Because grandmother is not there. You just go to sleep, child, said Alice, pulling off her socks, and don't you scream and wake your poor pa. Okay, she says you don't. She removes her this socks and says you go and sleep and don't scream in the dream because your poor pa also is. Pa means your papa is sleeping. Then when she tries to sleep, okay, but the same old nightmare came. Same old nightmare came. That means the child, scared child, used to see the nightmares almost daily. And in the nightmare, that bad, horrible dream was the butcher is with a knife and a rope is coming towards her, and he is giving a very dreadful smile. Okay, and she couldn't move. She cries out, grandma, grandma. Okay, and she woke shivering to see father beside her bed, a candle in his hand. And she wakes up from the dream and she finds that there was no ghost, nothing, no butcher was there, but her father was there, and there was a candle in his hand. Very scary atmosphere the author has tried to create in this paragraph. Okay, so what's the matter? The father asks the child. Then, my dear boys and girls, the child explains. Oh, a butcher, a knife. I want granny. I want granny. Father is standing before her, but she doesn't want herself. to be comforted by her father. She feels comfortable in grandmother's company. She's even if her father is physically present before the child, she says, "I want granny." And he blows out the candle and bent down and caught up the child in his arms, carrying her along the passage to a big bedroom. A newspaper was on the bed. He put away the paper, then carefully tucked up the child. He lay down beside her, half asleep, still with the butcher's smile all about her, it seemed. She crept close to him, snuggled her head under his arm, held tightly to his shirt, snuggled her hand. That means with her nose, okay, and head she snuggled under his arm to make herself comfortable, okay, and she feels a bit relieved when she finds that her father has lifted her and taken to a bigger bedroom, and his behavior has changed now, and he is behaving in a very kind, sympathetic, and friendly manner. Okay, the now then the dark didn't matter. She lay still. "Here, rub your feet against my legs and get them warm," said father. Okay, and tired out, she tired out, he slept before the little girl. Father was tired and he falls asleep. A funny feeling. Now, in this paragraph, my dear boys and girls, this is very important paragraph. How the child's opinion about her father changes. How it is changed. You will find in this paragraph. Okay. Uh, you see here, a funny feeling came over her. Poor father, not so big after all, and with no one to look after him. He was harder than grandmother, but it was a nice hardness. Hardness means that rough behavior, that tough behavior. She now starts realizing that it was a nice hardness. He was very tough and rough in behavior with her, but there might be some reason. It might be for my own good, for to reform me. He behaved like that. She starts feeling now. That little child starts thinking along these lines, you see. And every day he had to work and was too tired to be a Mr. McDonald. Mr. McDonald might not be having that much work, as much as her father had. Okay, and that's why he couldn't be friendly with me as Mr. McDonald was friendly with his children. She had torn up all his beautiful writings. She feels very pity, a great sympathy for her father, that his beautiful writings she had torn, and she had stuffed in the pin cushion. She stirred suddenly. There was a movement in her body suddenly, and sighed. She takes a deep breath, and this awakens the father as she is stirring, shaking, movement she is making, and this awakens the father who had fallen asleep. You can see here. Okay, what's the matter? Asked her father. Another dream? Is it another dream that you are seeing? What's the matter? Why are you shuddering, shaking, stirring? Okay. Oh, said the little girl, my head's on your heart. I can hear it going. What a big heart you have got, father, she says. Now, in this last paragraph, my dear boys and girls, find that she has realized why her father was very seemingly rude. He was not rude actually. He had a very kind heart, human heart. Okay, and finally, as the treatment uh, towards the child, as the behavior of the father changes, the child is transformed. In this way, we in the author has very beautifully, I mean, narrated how a small child, a little child who is growing, is influenced by the parental behavior, by the family atmosphere, and how, and not only the family atmosphere, but the whole environment, the environment as a whole, that affects a child, and how cautious and careful we should be while dealing with the small children. This story has a very great message, and there Catherine Mansfield uh, has finished this story. She has ended this story like this, a very happy ending, of course. And I suppose you have understood the story and the message and the theme. If any questions are there, you may ask me anytime, and the exercises are there. You attempt them. I'll be giving you some additional questions which you will have to attempt. And that's all for today, my dear boys and girls. Have a nice time. Thank you very much.